Welcome to the Disc Dog Pod. I'm your host, Jeff Hill, and
I'm your other host, Kirby McIlveen.
today we're going to talk about toss and fetch, something that everybody loves.
Yeah, specifically toss and fetch strategies.
That's right.
Yeah.
So we're going to be going over all kinds of stuff, handoffs, and how we throw and how we train, a little bit of everything.
Yeah, sounds good.
So basically, as far as I see it in toss and fetch, there's just a few components. At the very beginning, especially, you're going to send your dog, and you might even do that differently than subsequent throws. And the catch, which is the most important thing. Then the return, which is the second most important thing. And the last thing is the handoff, which, in my opinion, is the least important, but it may take the most training to get a good handoff. And that's what a lot of people struggle with it.
Yeah, I think it's probably the hardest. It's the most technical
Right.
piece to train. I actually would say it's more important, but then again, I've struggled with it. So,
and the reason I think it's not as important as the return, for example, well, first of all, a catch. If you don't get a catch, then it doesn't matter.
Well, that's number one.
Right. So the return, you will lose more time over with the return with a slow dog coming back slow than you will with a bad handoff, unless the handoff is just really, really, really difficult. But in that case, you got bigger problems to worry about probably than trying to maximize your strategy for a round.
I think the handoff, if it's bad, it's the most detrimental.
Yes.
Right. And then if it's just okay, it's not that bad.
Yes. And it could really impact your whole round, just that one thing, because you're worried, is the dog going to come to the right place so you can get it, and or are you going to have to fight with them? And then you could be worrying about that the whole round.
Yeah, and the handoff affects the throw too. If you kind of fumble with the handoff, and maybe your throw's late, all of that stuff.
Right.
That can all affect the throw, which affects the catch.
Mm-hmm.
So and when they miss it, that's always more time wasted than if they caught it.
Right. I know for me, if I don't like if they come to my right side, because if I'm as a right-handed thrower, I'm going to be having my right shoulder facing down the field. And if I have to completely turn around the opposite direction, get the disc, come all the way back, to me, it's just a bunch of wasted time and effort. I want to be basically in my throwing position or close to it whenever they bring it back.
Sure. Well, that kind of plays into how you do your handoff. So maybe we should start with that and talk about the different kinds, because your method's a little bit different of what you do in toss and fetch, doing the give and go. A lot of people send the dogs around.
Well, I actually do both, because I do send them around on the first one. So
right.
I have sort of a mix of how I do things. So we'll talk about it a little bit later, but your very first throw for everybody is completely different than all the other throws. And the last throw has some differences too. So we'll talk a little bit about that. But the way I always start my round is with an around, and I train my dogs to go both ways, both counterclockwise and clockwise. And I've had some dogs that would catch better going one direction or the other, because it's probably going to end up either on their right side or left side, depending on which way they go. If they have a little bit of an outrun, then the disc is going to end up on opposite sides of their body.
And some dogs definitely have a strong side. They can be kind of like, left or right-handed, so to speak.
Right. And even when they go around, the reason it worked real well with Enzo, I call like sending them around backwards, I guess. As a right-handed thrower, virtually everybody sends their dog around clockwise so that you can see them basically as they come out in front of you. That doesn't mean that's the best way to do it. And when I was having problems with Enzo catching and toss and fetch, I was trying everything. And one of the things I decided to do was to send him around the opposite way, basically behind me, and I can't see him, at least until he gets out a little bit. But when I did that, he had a wider outrun. And that's something you'll talk about later that is real important for you. And it worked for him, having a better outrun, and maybe even just being on that side of the disc, approaching it from the right to the left instead of the left to the right. And when I sent him around the more normal way, clockwise for a right-handed thrower, he would cut it really tight and just go straight down the field. So that was definitely completely different for him. And since then, I've always taught all of my dogs to go both directions. But that's only on the very first throw for me now. Generally, what I do is what we call give and go, which is after the first throw, I like to get them going in the right direction. They get used to it. And I don't want to lose that skill either of being able to go around. I mean, sometimes you need it, whether it be in toss or freestyle or some of the games that are out there. You can use that for a lot of different things, not just toss and fetch.
And sometimes you have to reset. Something goes wrong, right? I mean, the give and go handoff, when it goes wrong, sometimes it's like, oh shoot. And if it's not a matter of time being an issue, you might want to send them around just because it's a little bit easier to reset.
That's right. Or if you have on your last throw, you just have a lot of extra time. Maybe the disc is really wet. It could be raining or dog slobber or whatever. I might get the disc and clean it off and realize I got an extra 5 seconds or something. I'm just going to really get myself ready. And then at that point, I'm not going to have my dog just go at a dead stop when we're out of rhythm. So I'd send them around.
Right.
And so, but what I do after my first throw, I send them around, and after they catch it, hopefully, and bring it back, I have them bring pretty close to right in front of me, a little bit in my throwing position. Every dog's a little different for me, so there's going to be variation.
Yeah, the dog has a little bit of say in their preference. Some of them have their little quirks, they want to kind of turn this way or that way. And once they kind of get into the rhythm and start understanding what you're asking them, a lot of times the dogs will add their own little thing to it because I think they think it's, better to do it that way, or they think it's logical to them for whatever reason.
And I have no problems playing into that and letting them, like I've said before, be part of the team, a big part of the team, and making some decisions on their own, as long as it fits well and, it's not causing any kind of problems. If they prefer to come at a different angle or something, that's all great. Or if they want to come up to hand it to me or stay lower, I'm going to let them, have some say in that. And so once they hand it off to me, it's an immediate 180 back down the field. And then I continue the rest of the round that way. Generally, I usually don't do it around later on, but if I needed to, I could. And the reason I do this is just for time savings. And it's also helped me with my rhythm. It's helped me be a better thrower because it's really hard to do. We'll talk a little bit more about that. It's the most difficult way you can do it, but you're going to save the most time because you're not wasting the time going around. And
you do have to say why that's important, though, because I think for most people, saving time doesn't matter, because a lot of times for most dogs, they're probably going to get 4 or 5 throws either way. And the handoff, I think for a lot of dogs, isn't going to shave off enough time. The give and go handoff is not going to shave off enough time to get a fifth, to get the 5th to 6th throw to make it worthwhile. But in like Zen's case, for example, you can get a 6th throw because of the handoff. With Bon Bon, you can get a 5th throw instead of, 4 throws, 4 long ones and a short one, or just 4 throws. It actually does make a difference. So that is something to consider as well. Just kind of on the other side is that, okay, yes, you want to save time, but is it actually going to benefit you? What does that time save get you? If it doesn't get you another throw, then there's no point in doing it.
Exactly. It doesn't help you to have 5 seconds left on your last throw versus 3.
No, it doesn't. You don't get any extra credit for that.
That doesn't help at all. So, and it makes the throw much more difficult. It can be more difficult for the dog to catch, or it could make it easier for them to catch if they happen to like to run straight down the field. And depending on how you throw,
very much depends on the dog.
So many variables. But it became my standard because I have been able to get 5 40-yard throws with every single dog in 60 seconds since I started doing that. I don't like, except for Punky, but he used to get it. He just can't get it anymore. But he used to be able to do it. But it's what I actually did a video test, and I did it with Muse, and I wanted to see how much of a time difference there is. And I ended up finding out it was about 1 second per throw. So it ends up being about 4 seconds total, and it's not 5 seconds because you don't do 5 handoffs. You actually only do 4 handoffs in a 5 throws. Your first throw doesn't count as a handoff, or your last throw, depending on how you look at it. So I did a test though, and it was about 4 seconds. And I would always find when I was sending her around, I usually had about 1 second left or something like that, or I would not be able to get 5 throws off. I'd have to do a short throw. So we call that a 4.5 throws. That's how we refer
it's
to
4.5, even though usually you're only throwing it to the first scoring
usually
point zone.
10 yards
it depends,
or whatever it is.
Sometimes you might throw
or
the 20.
Or 20, something like that. So, but once I switched to give and go, Muse always got 5 throws. I didn't need to try. She's pretty darn quick. Most dogs can't get 5 throws. It's just the way it is. Part of it's handoffs, but part of it's also their return speed. Maybe they haven't been trained enough to get that really, really fast speed down.
Or there's a drop in their speed throughout the round because the fitness level might not be there. They might come out the gate, on fire, going quick. And then, by the third or fourth throw, they're huffing and puffing a little and coming back slower.
And another thing I noticed with Muse, this is a big deal also. If she caught all the discs, I would get 5 throws within a round pretty consistently. But if she missed one, then I usually got 4 throws because it took extra time. You miss the disc, they have to go pick it up and come back with it. And as soon as you do that, I lost 2 or 3 seconds, whatever it is. Or if they tip it, that's even worse. They tip it and then it goes further and then it's rolling around and they're trying to get it.
And hopefully it doesn't go outside of the field of play and they're trying to chase it down.
It makes it even worse. So what I found was that even that would end up being effectively 2 misses because now I'm getting 1 less throw. So that's basically another miss. So I would at best get 3 catches. And that
doesn't fly anymore.
That doesn't work.
Not anymore.
So when I would get when I was doing the give and go, even if she missed one, I would still get 4 catches. And if you're in Skyhounds, you get 4 catches. And the bonus, you're
doing pretty well.
22 points. No one's ever going to complain about a 22 point round.
Hey, if it's over 20 points in Skyhounds, can't be upset about that.
You got to feel really good about that. So that is basically my strategy for handoffs and why I do what I do. How about you?
So mine's really dog dependent. And for me, I kind of base it off the dog's catching skills. So, and I let the dog have a say. And that's sort of my way of letting them have a say. So if they're not quite as good at catching, I prefer to do the around because it gives me more time to give them the exact throw that they need. So, for example, Flair is one that she needs a very specific throw, has to be perfectly timed. And pretty much the timing has to be when she gets to it, it has to be within her range to jump and catch it. Because as soon as she meets where the disc is, she's just going to jump. And she doesn't slow down very well. She knows how to collect, or I've taught her to collect, but to get her to do that at 40 yards is a challenge sometimes.
Yeah, that's another thing that we'll have to talk about is training a dog when they're out there at 40 yards. I mean,
it's a different thing. I can get Fleur to collect very nicely at 10, 20 yards, and she listens.
Right.
And I think I'm probably known for, with Torch, running down the field yelling, wait! Because that's the only way he would listen.
And that's the thing, too, because they're 40 yards down the field. If you're 40 yards away and you're trying to call out commands to them, come on. I mean, yeah, and there could be music
and it's
playing.
Not as impactful if you're far away. It's not as loud, If they're right next to you and you give them a cue to do something, it's right there, it's obvious. But if, they're way back there, they're kind of like, I'm focused on this. And then you're kind of saying something in the background. So with Torch, I, taught him to wait, and I taught him kind of a collection cue, and then, associated that with getting him to wait until I released him to jump for the disc. And he would do it, but I had to yell, wait. I mean, I had to really help him out, especially in the beginning. As he got older, it was a lot better. But when he was younger, he was like, no, it's coming down. I think I can get it. And granted, he's pretty amazing athletically, so sometimes he could get it, but I'm like, don't risk it. So, after he kind of learned, okay, I'll wait till it gets close enough, then I'll jump. But Flair is not there yet, man. I was like trying to get her to wait. She'll do it when she's close, but farther out there, it's hard. So with them, I choose to do the around, and I've actually chosen to do that with pretty much all of my other dogs because I think it helps to get the dog on an outrun and to do kind of a circular path. So when they're following the disc, if they go straight down the field and they're looking up, they don't have a great frame of reference for how quickly the disc is falling, especially if there's nothing in the background. If they're just looking at a blue sky and they're watching the disc, it's hard to judge how fast the disc is coming down with nothing else to go off of. So I think dogs that struggle to catch have an easier time coming out and around from the side and kind of watching it on one side of their face and judging it against, the tree line or the field behind it. I think it's just a little bit easier for them to see and judge it. So, dogs with catching issues, I prefer to send around. I think it gives them an easier time. And I like to train them to go and do an outrun like a border collie. I mean, my theory on why, my opinion is that border collies are generally the best toss and fetch dogs. And, I haven't looked and, created data out of this, but I think if you did look and you looked at the dogs that have won toss and fetch world championships, I think most of them are border collies.
There's going to be a lot. Yeah.
The majority is going to be border collies.
I agree. I think they're the best catching dogs.
And I think if you take out, obviously Zin's won several toss and fetch. I wouldn't say count it like that. That doesn't count as 5 Aussies. Okay.
What about Muse then?
I know. But I think if you don't count the multiple world championships and you just count the list of dogs that have won toss and fetch world championships, I think most of it's going to be border collies. I think it'd be really interesting to see. Maybe I'll have to look at that later.
And of course, the number one thing with it is the catching ability, but also the return speed. I mean, they're pretty quick.
Border collies generally do
pretty fast.
Tend to bring it back fast. But I think there's a lot of Aussies out there that are coming back really fast too. And
I think you got to work a little bit more with them.
Okay.
Some of them may not have that tendency to want to run back as quick, especially because there's a lot more show Aussies.
That's true.
Than there are show border collies.
What's funny is
it does make a difference.
I see a lot of show border collies that come back super fast.
Yeah, it's
kind
really
of amazing.
Depends on the
dog. It's individual. But so in general, I would say border collies tend to be the best toss and fetch dogs overall. And my theory for why that is because they do the big outrun. They tend to do those big outruns more than other breeds do. And I think that allows them to see and judge the disc better. So I try to encourage that within my dogs. We've talked about breeds on here before, and my McNabs like to go in a straight line. And I've actually done some things to teach them to do a bigger outrun. Like I'll put, an X pen out to the side of me or, cones or something, a camper chair to kind of just show them that it's possible and work it into them.
Well. I did that probably with Enzo. If a dog seems to be particularly having problems, then I start bringing in those little techniques.
Sure. Sketch never had to do that. And Sketch had a big outrun, and it was even bigger in distance, but he always would he'd kind of run alongside one of the field. And if you watch really, really good herding dogs, when they send them on the initial outrun to go pick up the sheep, it's super wide. They don't run straight at the sheep. They go in a giant circle. And it's really like an oval.
And that can be bad too in toss and fetch because how many times have we seen a dog go around the cone?
Yeah, you don't want too much. That's why I try not to use cones when I'm teaching it because I don't want them to go
I've seen them so many times just go 90 degrees from the handler straight towards the sideline around the cone, and the person threw the disc because they didn't realize the dog was going to do that. And they look, and the dog hasn't even started going down the field yet, and her throw's halfway down, and that dog has no chance.
That's one thing I have to be careful with Sora of. Actually, if the field is not flat, she will change her outrun based on the field. So, like at Skyhounds finals, when we were on the other field by the river, the way that they had the field one year, the one side of the field was actually kind of higher than the other, and her outrun completely changed. And I was like, oh, that's not good.
And you have to adjust.
And so I had to adjust. And then I realized, we got better as the weekend went on. But the first round, I was a little bit flustered because I'm like, oh, shoot, our timing's off. And of course, I was sending her around, at the time I was sending, I think I did give and go. Anyway, not important. So back to what I was saying about teaching that outrun. What's really interesting is when I was in Japan, I learned from Mona that's why they kind of do a similar strategy, but opposite. So the dog runs straight and the disc flies with a lot of hyzer. That's why one of the reasons that they throw with so much hyzer. They're also using light discs for the most part, but they throw with a lot of hyzer so that the discs curve and then the dogs run straight down the middle so they can watch the disc.
And that's close to how I throw. And I do prefer to do that. I don't always do it. It really depends on actually the organization. I have a much harder time doing that in Skyhounds because it is so easy.
That's hard.
To throw it out to the side and have it curve back every single time and have it be in the middle. You don't have any room for error in Skyhounds. If the wind changes a little or something like that, it's a miss. It's out of bounds, really. It's out of bounds. But that is my general strategy. I tend to throw higher than most people, and I throw with more hyzer off to the side. And when I do that, the dog can actually see the disc better because the disc is now tilted, and they can see see the top of the disc.
And it's easier to judge when
it's
falling.
easier to judge when it's coming down. So I always like my disc to come down at an angle for the dog. I always want that. I try to always have that, particularly in toss and fetch. I want that as best as I can. And then the dog gets used to always having it fall that way. Now in my practice, I let them see every direction because you're not always going to throw how you want. So I always teach them, they get to see flat discs. They get to see discs with Anheuser tilted the other way, and they get to see discs, lots of throws with hyzer. I probably do something like 75% of my throws that I try to do so they have hyzer because that's what I'm trying to do, and that's usually what they're going to see.
Right. Yeah. And so my strategy is different where I tend to throw flat. I kind of want the disc to fall flat. And part of this is rooted in I succeeded this way with Torch. So then, I kind of keep doing that until the next dog breaks it or shows me something different and I need to change my strategy for that specific dog. So like I said, my whole strategy is based specifically on the dog. But so far it's worked for Sora. But again, Sora's a border collie. She does the outrun. Torch didn't really do the outrun, but when I kind of evaluated his style versus Sketch's, I noticed because Sketch was a killer toss and fetch catching dog. I mean, he just didn't miss. If he made it out to the disc in time, it was going to be a catch, pretty much guaranteed. There was very rarely a miss from Sketch. But when I was analyzing how Sketch played toss and fetch versus Torch, the outrun was the big difference. And of course the waiting. But I thought, okay, so if I teach Torch to kind of play like Sketch, then we can make this work.
Results.
And we did. It worked out. Torch is not always a perfect toss and fetch dog, but toss and fetch dogs is really hard to it's very rare that you get a dog that has little talent in toss and fetch and take them to be a superstar in toss and fetch. You really can only go up a couple, rings of the ladder, right? You can make a good dog great. You can make a great dog excellent, but you can't really make a good dog excellent, if that makes sense, right? It's very challenging to do that. I mean, you may have one or two, rounds occasionally. I mean, even Flair will go out, and she tends to do this like the week before a competition. She goes out there and she'll get like 5 for 5 catches, and she comes back and she's like, oh yeah. And I'm like, Flair, it's Tuesday. The competition's Saturday. Like, where is this at the competition? She's done this like 4 times now before competitions, and I'm like, girl, save it. But anyway.
So something else I was thinking about with the flat throw, and an issue that I see with it sometimes, and I throw a lot of my toss and fetch throws as bullets that are flat and out in front of the dog. Just like I said, it depends. A lot of things. If there's a lot of tailwind or something like that, I might be doing more of that. Or even like headwind, I don't want to throw it up high and to the side in headwind. That's not going to be smart. You're not going to have success with that. But something I know can be a problem with dogs is if the disc is completely flat out in front of them with no hyzer or any kind of angle, I can't really see the top of the disc. They're just seeing a very thin piece of the disc. It's only about a half an inch right out in front of them. And especially with the background with trees or whatever, that could be really difficult to see. And if you've ever seen a dog zoom underneath the disc and not even make an attempt at it, and it was, let's say, 2.5 feet or 3 feet off the ground, and they just zoom past it, I think that's a big reason why, is because it kind of came up on them pretty quick because they didn't quite realize what they were seeing. They're just seeing like a line out there basically, and the next thing you know, they were on the disc.
Yeah, the target was too small for them to really judge.
So I've seen that. I've seen that with my dogs. I've seen that with many dogs.
You see it every competition. Some dog does it.
So it's just something to keep in mind, that if your dog has a particular problem with that, then you might need to change your strategy
right.
for that. Or if they have a hard time with curved discs, then you're going to have to keep them more straight and flat.
Right. And so I did mention that I do send most of my dogs around. Well, there's one dog that I don't, and she is my most successful toss and fetch dog that I've ever had, and that's Sora, obviously. So with Sora, she doesn't do very well when I send her around. That's her weak side. The right side for her is her weak side. When she flanks and does outruns, she really prefers the other side. And I can see this even in herding, that she's weak on the clockwise side. The counterclockwise side, she's really strong. So I've tested a couple things over the years. I tried to get her to go around counterclockwise, which was great until it wasn't, because I couldn't see her. And I did this because I had a back injury that throwing really quickly, it just kind of exacerbated the injury. So I changed to that style for 1 year. We were somewhat successful, but it just, when the conditions weren't perfect, it didn't work very well because I couldn't see her. And that sometimes would make me hesitate. Sometimes I would throw a little early, and it just wouldn't be quite right. And again, like I mentioned earlier about Sora, if the field is slightly off, if it's not perfectly flat, she changes her outrun a little. So it's important for me to know where she's going to go, right? So I've pretty much settled on, we are doing give and go. That's her handoff. That's what she likes. And one of the reasons she's so successful with it is because she's an incredible catcher. She's an incredible tracker, and she's a really great catcher. So, some of the issues that a dog that doesn't catch very well might face doing the give and go handoff, not an issue for Sora. So that's one of the reasons that I've chosen to do it with her. She seems to prefer it. She hands the disc off better to me when she knows we're going to do a give and go, because I think it's, an immediate reward for her, because she gets to go back into chasing the disc. She doesn't have to go around, because I think Sora, now having both sides of the coin, she's like, that around thing, that's wasting time, girl. She's like, let's go. I'll give you that disc and I'm taking off. So luckily I've done some PT to kind of help that injury to a place where I can do the give and go handoff again, and it doesn't hurt, and I can get the timing right and everything for her. But, I think that's just an example of that. Sometimes you have to go based off what the dog needs.
And with the give and go, it's much more difficult to do it for the handler.
You have to be quick.
So what did you find? Because I know you struggled a little bit with doing it to really get it down to where you felt comfortable with it. What particular part of that was hard for you?
I think, it's just as soon as you get the disc, you have to go, because your dog, especially once they know it, they turn around real quick and start taking off. And if the disc is behind them, for most dogs, that's not going to be a good thing.
And that's the thing. By the time they hand it to you, like you said, they're already completely stopped, and they're ready to turn back around. Whereas if you do an around, when they hand it to you, they got to actually continue behind you or whichever way they're going, and then get out in front of you. And I mean, that's, like I said, it's about a second. And in toss and fetch, your release doesn't take a second. The slowest thrower in the world, by the time they pull back and go forward, it's not even a second. So an extra second is actually a lot of time.
It's a lot of time to help you kind of
get ready for your throw.
I was so used to having a lot of time with Sketch and Flash and Torch. All my other dogs, I was used to just having a lot of time to kind of reset and get this perfect throw. And with Torch, I had to have the perfect throw or it wasn't going to work. So I was a little bit in that mode. So when I got Sora, I was thinking still, okay, I've got to have a perfect throw, right? But she's a little bit better about catching odd throws, or if the throw's slightly off, then she will make up for it. And another thing that helped me get the give and go handoff a little bit better is that I stopped reaching forward to get the handoff to take the disc from her, because then she's already
further away.
Yeah, she's further away. She's getting out there even quicker.
And you got to get back.
I have to pull back even more and set up, and it takes half a second longer to set that up than it would to just grab the disc close to me and pull right up and go back.
And that goes back to what I said early on, which was I like them to give me the handoff when I'm basically already in my throwing position, more or less. I try to
so that's what I try to do too,
it as possible. and I want to have it right there. And as soon as they hand it to me, I go straight back and forward.
Same. And you know what's funny is that I found when I did that it was so quick, and when the handoff's perfect, and I've practiced it and I've gotten into the rhythm of doing that. When I do my throwing practice, that's how I would practice it, as if she was handing it off there, and go into a very quick throw. Yep. I found I was actually pretty accurate because I didn't have time to think about it or do anything. You just have automatic. To go. You've got to go.
You do get really good at throwing. If you do this with a 40-yard dog that's going to be catching 40-yard throws, and you're throwing 40 yards and you do a give and go, you get way better at throwing.
Oh, yeah.
It forces you. You don't have a choice. It's basically the moment it's in your hand, you got to throw it. And if you could do that, that means you're doing it without thinking, without preparing, without anything. It also means you might pick up the disc right where there's a big goober on there.
Yeah, I did that last competition. That was great.
Anything like that, you might pick it up where there's extra damage on the disc. You just got to throw it. And you end up being able to throw the disc in any situation. Once you've done it enough, you can get really good at it. And I practice the same way. Maybe not every single throw, because sometimes I want to think about how my throw is working, and maybe if I want to adjust it a little bit. But for the most part, I just pick it up and throw it as fast as I can, and just keep doing that thousands and thousands and thousands of times until it's perfect.
Yep. One way I like to do it, just so that I make sure I'm not taking too much time, is I'll do a drill where I make a throw, and I have a stack of discs there, obviously. Make a throw, and then before that disc lands on the ground, I'm going to make the next throw and get it out there. So it's kind of this game to make sure you're throwing quickly.
I remember someone telling us that. Did Tony Crumley mention that to us? I remember something
Tony did.
So early
I want to say Adrian Stoica mentioned it at a seminar.
I remember early, like Tony.
I think Tony may have mentioned that. Yeah,
that was something he showed us in our first class that we had attended. That was something that we learned. And those are just great strategies of how to improve yourself.
The other thing too that we haven't mentioned that yet is, if you get good at throwing quickly like that, suddenly that last throw, that when it's coming down to the wire and it's counting down 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, it's a lot easier to do it when you're used to doing it for basically every throw.
You're doing it every throw. So if you watch me with time counting down, and I mean with Zin, sometimes I'm down to 1 second. The timer says 1. I don't even have the disc in my hand yet, and I grab it and throw it, basically almost straight from her mouth. And I've done that with Muse a bunch of times. It's because I'm just used to it. Every throw is almost that quick. I just have to speed it up just a tiny bit, but it's not like a totally different throw for me, really.
Right.
It's kind of in line with the others.
Right. And for me, so like with Flair, for example, having a give and go handoff, even though I do around most of the time, it allows me to take some risks. So specifically with Flair, Flair, depending on the time, how many misses she has, she's very flexible, and she might get 4 throws today. She might get 4.5 throws today, or she might get 5. You don't really know. Until you just see how the round's going. It depends on how bad the miss is. It depends on, sometimes she does a little outrun, how her handoff is. All of that stuff plays a part. So I don't always know how many throws I'm going to get with Flair. So if I'm going to do 4.5 throws, which means I'm going to throw my 4th throw at 10 yards just to try to get an extra point, then I'm going to do a give and go handoff with her to save time, because it's not super important, because it is a short throw.
And you can stick it right in front of her nose.
I can just pop it right in front of her. She'll jump right over that line.
You don't need to pull back or anything.
Exactly.
You can just flip your wrist.
But it allows me to take more risks like that, because I have that.
You have that skill.
I have that as an option.
And you can just pull it out anytime.
Yeah. And there's been times where, she had 4 throws and she's about to get the 5th. And, you're going to try to get the throw, whether or not it's perfect or not. If the time's counting down, it's better to make an attempt than not make an attempt. So
Absolutely.
At the times where, Flair's handing it off to me and I have 1 second, I don't have time to send her around. It's going to take her too long to get around me. So it's not even going to be worthwhile to do unless I just tell her to go.
Right.
So sometimes, if they're borderline, like they might get one more or might not, and it's really, really close, I just say go. And all my dogs know it now as kind of a backup plan, for Link and Flair.
And this is why for everybody out there, I think it's no matter what, it's a great skill to teach.
Yeah.
And that's why I think it's important to teach them to go around the one way, the opposite direction, and do give and go. You could use these in different things, different places.
Yeah, I mean, you for some reason, if your dog hands it off to the wrong side of you and you're running out of time, but you have enough time to send them around, but maybe the only option is to send them the other way, kind of thing. I think it's good to have options.
Yep.
And then find which option fits best most of the time, and always have a backup plan.
Yep, be flexible and willing to adjust on the fly.
Mm-hmm.
That I was going to talk a little bit about the. We were kind of talking about the different throws, fourth throw and the fifth throw and the first throw. The obvious thing is that the first throw and the last throw are the ones that are the most different from one another, especially the first throw. And I'll just tell a little story of something that happened to me and the kind of training dedication that you want to try to have. This one year we had, it was the second to last competition. And I had 2 rounds of toss and fetch, and both rounds, the very first throw, I outthrew my dog. And I was a bit upset with myself. I'm thinking, I can't believe this. I'm outthrowing him. And I knew it was my fault just with the timing, because the timing is different on the first throw from all of the other throws. And it was something like a month later, we were going to have our final competition, which was the Krusty Classic. And I was only going to have 1 round of toss and fetch. I spent the next month every single day, because I was so upset with myself for doing this. I went out and I practiced without the dog my first throw, which was to stand there and whatever the timer might be, ready, set, go, 3, 2, 1, go, whatever, ready, go. There's different timers. I did every single different combination of them because I wasn't sure what we'd be using for a timer. And I practiced that first throw, and I would visualize my dog and where she had to be before I threw it. And I pick up the next distance. I did about 100 each day all year. And I decided I'm never going to have a problem with the first throw again. So I get out to the competition and I'm very confident because I had done this practice. And very first throw, toss and fetch round, she goes around. I throw it the exact perfect time, perfect throw, and she just whiffed on it. Didn't even bother me.
You're like, at least you did your part.
I accomplished what I needed to, and I gave my girl a chance to catch.
Maybe she was surprised the throw was catchable.
She was probably not used to it. But that was, I did thousands of throws, and I have not had to work on my first throw since. That's been over 10 years now since I did that. I have not had to practice my very first throw ever at the park by myself because I did that so many times. It's just in my system now that throw is so different from the rest. And the other one it's a little different is the last throw, because you might be out of time. And most people have so much more time than they think. You hear 10, 9, it ain't get the disc and throw it, and it goes all over the place. The dog goes out there.
That's what we all do our first, like in the very beginning.
And the dog gets it, and they almost get all the way back, and then time runs out. And I'm like, you still had so much time. You almost could have gotten 2 throws off. And so speaking of this timing thing, what do you do during your round to know how you're doing it? If you're going to have to do a 4.5 throw,
well, I wanted to add something about your story about the first throw before we talk about that. I think I've had some sort of, that was like a mental block for you.
Yes.
And I've had a mental block probably about each throw over the years, like at different time frames throughout my disc dog career. At one point it was the first throw, at another point it was like the second throw, and another point the third, fourth. At some point in my career I've gone through all these phases and kind of done the same thing, and I'm like, okay, now hopefully I don't have any mental blocks about any of these throws anymore, because I've had it for each one and kind of done the same thing, so I had to cycle through all of them. But just kind of funny add-on to what you were saying, because I could totally relate to that times 5. So as far as how do you know if you're on track for 5 throws, or how many throws you're going to get in a round, I think the big one that's pretty common knowledge, we didn't come up with this, I think maybe it was Penny Mahan that told me this, or Todd, I can't remember, but long time ago, one of the ways to know that you're on track for 5 long throws, like at the 40-yard line is that if your dog hands you back the disc before it says 30 seconds remaining, good shot that you're going to get 5 throws.
That's for your second.
Yes. Hands it back to you for your
before the third throw.
Yes, for the third throw, but after the second throw. So if you've got the disc in hand for your third throw, when it says 30 seconds, you're probably on track to get 5 throws unless something crazy happens or your dog slows down a lot.
Exactly, and that's my key for sure, is that 30 seconds. I'm waiting, especially if I think, oh, maybe we're not doing as well this round, not going as fast, or maybe I threw really far, so I'm losing a little bit more time. I'm listening to that timer because every single timer in our sport has a 30-second notification. Some of the other ones are different.
All of them have a 15.
I know.
It's so sad.
But 30 seconds, if I get that disc in my hand and I throw it and it's out of my hand and I hear 30, I'm set.
Oh, you're super set.
Super set. Don't have to worry about anything.
And to get a 6th throw, I was watching Sora to catch the disc at 30 seconds. And then I kind of knew I could get the 6th throw, which it would be the 5th throw at 10 yards to get.
So with Zen, I pay attention to that 30 seconds. And if I'm lucky, she's starting to come back with the third throw, just starting to. She catches it, turns, starts coming back, and they say 30. If they do that, I'm probably going to get a 20-yarder snuck in there.
Yeah, with Sora, I wanted to do the 6th throw, but the problem was I got too afraid because rarely ever would there be a 15-second timer. And if they had the 15-second in there, that helps so much. I would, if they use the 15-second timer, I probably almost get it in with Sora every time.
So if they're coming back, the 15 seconds, if you get the 15-second, listen to the timer, maybe for the first competitor, or ask them to play it if you want to hear it, especially if you're at a big event, so that you're prepared on which timer it is. When they're coming back, if they're coming back to me after the third throw and I hear 15 before they get to me, I'm in trouble, because that means I don't have enough time for 2 more long throws.
Yeah, if Sora was at the 10-yard line coming back when they said 15, I could get the 6th throw at 10 yards.
Right.
If she was handing it to me and it said 15 seconds, I probably could get 20, but I'm way too conservative and scared to do that, so I probably would never. But if they had the 15 seconds, like we could get the 6th throw off in 13 seconds, like pretty darn consistently. Under 10 seconds, we're cutting it really close.
So what I was referring to was the for a 5-throw dog, the one where you really aren't going to get 6 throws no matter what you do. That 15 seconds is very important, just like the 30-second one on that return for the third throw. So you're getting ready to do your 4th throw. I want to hear 15 after it's out of my hand, just like you want to hear 30.
Oh, yes.
When this, for the third throw, when it's out of your hand, you want to hear the 30 after. So what I'm saying is, if I hear 15 and they're coming back to me, I'm already decided, okay, I got to throw a short throw now. I'm going to have to do what we call 4.5. I'm going to have to throw a 20-yarder or 10-yarder because I'm not getting it. I'm not going to get that long throw. The tough one is when it's in your hand and you're getting ready to throw and you hear 15 right in the middle of your throw.
Yeah, we've had that happen.
But usually that works out great for me. And the reason being is that you lose more time in the beginning of your round typically, because you have the initial start of the timer. And typically the dog doesn't even cross the line, and they're at a dead stop before the timer starts. So you lose more time in your very first throw than the rest of them typically, as long as your dog doesn't slow down a lot. So I know that if that 30-second, sometimes it'll say 30 seconds just before I get the disc, and I'm thinking that sounds close. But then by the time the 15-second timer hits, I have no problem. I throw it, and then they say 15, and it's because your round almost like speeds up. You sort of make up time because you're quicker towards the end of the round. Again, if your dog doesn't slow down, than at the beginning, because you're at a dead stop at the beginning, and you lose probably a couple seconds on that very first throw just getting started.
Yep, I agree. I think about this all with Link, because Link is one of those dogs that he has always gotten 4 throws pretty consistently, and we're getting 5 now fairly consistently. And, just trying to get it a little faster just to make sure it's always 5. Every once in a while he whiffs on a handoff or he comes back a little slower. He's young, so sometimes he gets a little bit distracted after he catches it. He kind of, takes a look at the judges and makes sure they're watching him. So right now with Link, I'm always looking for that. It can't say 10 seconds for the last throw.
Yeah, there's no possible way.
Because if I have the 4th throw in my hand and it's,
yeah,
and we're
just throw it long.
Yeah, exactly. You're just going to get 4 throws. So the other thing is that a lot of times we talk about the 15-second timer. Most of the time, we do not have the luxury of the 15-second timer. So I think we should start a petition to get all of the organizations to use the timer that alerts you when there's 15 seconds left. That would really help a lot.
I agree.
In fact, I even further, I think because of our experience with how that assists in getting that 6th throw, it would push the sport. It would take the sport to the next level, because the reason I never did it with Sora, rarely I did it, is because there was no 15-second timer. And if you're at a World Finals, that's a big risk.
Risky.
Because the problem is that, okay, so I'm going to throw 10 yards. Well, what happens if she tips it to 20 and then I don't get her back for the 5th throw? The 6th throw, then we only got 4.5 throws, and that's a huge blow.
Yep.
When I know we can nail 5 long ones, no problem, super easy. It's a big risk for, quite honestly, little reward.
It is little reward, but that little bit.
But hey, people win stuff by half a point all the time.
Virtually every DA or toss and fetch championship is won within a point.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah,
point or less.
Very rarely does somebody run away with toss and fetch.
Right. I mean, it's almost never.
It's rare. It's rare.
So the timing for me with Zin on the 6 throws, to give you guys some idea on this, if you want to try to do it, I'm going to assume I don't have a 15-second timer.
Yeah.
15-second. And what happens is, if I don't hear the 10 seconds when I get that for the 5th throw, if I don't hear 10 seconds, I'm throwing a 20 yards, because I know for sure I got no problem getting that in. If they say 10 seconds, so it says 10, then I have to estimate. I hope within a second or so I get the disc in my hand. If I do, I could do a 10-yarder. I've timed it. I think we talked about this before. To get a 10-yarder for a really fast dog, maybe about 7 seconds. But it's tough.
Not only have we talked about it, I've experienced it on the fly. When you surprised me that one time, we were doing pairs DA with Zin, and I thought
World Championships.
Yeah, at the World Championships of all places, and I think Jeff's gonna throw. He's got the 5th throw because each player alternates, right? So it starts with Jeff, and I assumed it was going to end with Jeff.
So I had the 5th throw in my hand, and what did you say to me?
Well, you said, what do I do?
Yeah.
I'm like, what are you consulting me for? Because you're the one that knows the timing of this whole 6th throw thing. And I'm like, well, why don't you just, try to win it with, a 5-point throw. Yeah. I said win it, which I thought meant throw 40 yards, but apparently that didn't translate the same way to you.
So I thought this was a great idea, so I threw 10 yards or 20 yards, whatever it was.
And I was walking off the field.
She was gone, and I turn around, and I'm like, Kirby, and she comes flying back.
I'm like, oh, okay, I guess. Luckily, I threw it straight.
And you had about a second left when you got the disc in your hand.
Yeah, that was a nice surprise.
You had a beautiful throw, and we won the World Championship.
Well, thank goodness, because would I have ever heard the end of it if I did it?
But we did what you said. You said win it, and we did. That's all that really matters.
Well, you know what I learned from that moment is that maybe I should be more clear in my instructions.
Do you want to tell them about the what you told me with Volt?
Oh gosh, that was another one. This is a time where we did the opposite.
And we could have won.
Well, maybe this is why you have trauma, and that's why you did the 10-yard throw. So you may have to remind me exactly what happened. I tried to block it from memory.
This
that
is
time
again
Volt almost won something.
Pairs DA, and we were basically set up to win it with Volt.
He was nailing it. We had started with 3 in the 5.5 zone, I think.
So it was coming back for my throw. It was the 4th throw.
And Volt's one of those that he's sometimes a 4.5 throw dog. Sometimes he's a 4 throw dog. He never is going to get 5.
So I turned to Kirby as he's returning, and we're basing it on timing and everything. I said again, what do I do? And you said 20. So I get the disc, and I'm thinking we're going to get 20 points. And not only that, we're going to get 22 points.
Yeah, we're going to get 22 points.
We were perfect. And I throw, beautiful 40-yard throw. I'm so happy he catches it. He gets 22 points. And she looks at me and she's like, what did you do?
I'm like, Jeff, I said 20. And he's like, yeah, I did 20.
We got 22.
Yeah, we got 22. I said, no, Jeff, 20 yards.
And I'm like, no.
Because I was thinking, okay, we got a lot of time. Bolt was like, he was on a rhythm that day. And so I was thinking, you throw 20 yards, and then I'll do the last throw and throw long. And we could have gotten 23 and a half or 24 and a half.
Yeah. And we lost, I think, only by a point.
Yeah, he was second place.
He got second place.
That was so funny, which honestly can't complain about it. Volt had an amazing day, but that was just so funny.
I mean, he performed above his normal level. I mean,
he has some days like he's kind of 50-50. Like some days he's kind of silly, and then some days he's just a killer toss and fetch dog. He never puts his toss and fetch together with his freestyle on the same day, unfortunately. But some days he'll just have these really killer toss and fetch days. Or he'll, do these ones where he'll go out and get a 20+ point first round, and then the second round's a 0, and it's like, Bolt, dang it, buddy. He's a mystery dog.
Yeah.
But sometimes he's really, really good. And that day he was excellent. So
yeah, he deserved being on the podium.
Yeah, he was awesome.
He was great. It was fun.
It was just funny because I think there's like a picture of like me on the ground, like, no, because I knew I was like, because I think the team that won had already gone. We kind of knew what we needed to get in order to win. But we also weren't thinking Volt super competitively either, because you can't put any pressure on him, and you never know what he's going to do.
We normally have an exact plan when we do pairs DA. We pretty much know what we're doing within a very small range, but with him, he's a little bit of a wild card.
Yeah, he is a wild card.
Flair's a wild card. Same kind of stuff.
Sora, we always know it's going to be 5 long throws every time.
Muse was 5.
Torch was 5.
Yeah, so
Zin's also a mystery sometimes.
She's a little bit of a mystery because we can maybe get that extra throw in, which we seem to do every single time somehow. I don't know. She must really like pairs. She really runs fast for it.
She does good at it. So she's a great toss and fetch dog.
I got another one quick little funny story. I don't wear shoes with laces anymore competing because of one thing that happened to me, and it would happen in toss and fetch.
Oh, really? I didn't know about this.
So what I wear basically since that time almost exclusively is the Solomon shoes. So they kind of have laces, but they're not the traditional laces that you tie. They're like inside of a thing that you just pull. So you could stuff the laces up inside so that they're completely out of the way. And there's some even lace shoes I know that'll do that, but I haven't used them. And the reason is because I was at the line, and I take a step whenever I throw toss and fetch. Most people do. I know you don't like to. That's a discussion also. I always say whatever you feel comfortable doing. But I was at the line, and my shoelace got untied, and I didn't notice it. And I'm standing there, and I had stepped on my the shoelace for my right foot.
Oh, no.
I stepped on it, didn't know it. I go to do my throw, and I stumbled. I didn't actually fall. My throw went so bad. It went flying off to the right into the easy ups. And this isn't like that long ago. This isn't like when I first started or something like that. This is when, I had some dogs that were really rocking and rolling out there.
I don't remember this.
I think it was with Muse.
When?
About 10 years ago. And I stumbled, and people were like, what happened? Did you fall into a hole? What did you do? I said, I was stepping on my freaking shoelace or whatever. I went to step. It was caught under my other foot, and I stumbled. Again, I didn't fall, but awful throw, and I was so mad at myself, and I decided that's never going to happen again.
Folks that know me really well have seen me do like the quadruple knot on my shoelaces if I wear shoes that have long laces. This is why. Also in freestyle too, you just anytime you can trip, don't want to trip. for sure. Yeah, on the same vein, and this is really more for freestyle, but I don't wear any jewelry, no
Oh
necklaces,
yeah,
no
yeah, 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 yeah,
earrings,
yeah.
nothing like that. Just, I've seen people that wear stuff, and I'm like, oh my gosh,
yes,
it gives me anxiety.
You got to check your pockets, make sure they're okay. I had a dog's foot get caught in a pocket on a dog catch. So if I have pockets, they either need to be zipped. I used to never wear pockets. I would not allow my pants, shorts, whatever to have pockets. But now I do. I just make sure that they're in such a way that the dog can't get their foot in it.
Yeah.
Or loops. You can have issues with loops for a belt loop on your pants or shorts.
Sure.
Gotta be careful.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's a good one too. Yeah, I usually try to wear a shirt that covers the belt loops on pants, or like my freestyle vest. I mean, most of the time that sort of thing comes into play more with freestyle than toss and fetch, but always trying to keep any of those things. Even like the zipper pulls and stuff, if they have a like a hole in it that the dog's nail could get stuck in.
Absolutely.
I try to tuck those in a way that the dogs can't get them, or change it, or whatever you got to do to make it dog safe. But let's kind of go back a little bit and talk about the wind, because we really haven't brought that up yet, and why we choose one side versus another. You get that option at virtually every toss and fetch event. So
and we have a bit of a different opinion on this, a little bit different, because the sun comes into play with this also.
I will say again, and my theme has always been, it very much depends on the dog.
Yes, and my decision is almost always based on the wind. I am going to trust that my dog can make up for whatever the wind is going to do to the disc, and I have a lot of faith in them, and I try to train them in all different conditions. So I tend to pick, if I could pick tailwind, I do, as long as it's not too strong. And then if it's crosswind, that gets really difficult. It depends on if there's a tiny bit of tailwind. You usually have a little bit of head or tailwind, even if it's mostly cross.
Yeah, rarely do you ever have perfectly crosswind across the field. Right. Usually it's some kind of diagonal angle.
So in those cases, it gets very difficult. And I've thrown in both extremely heavy headwind and heavy tailwind. If the wind gets too heavy, tailwind won't work. The dogs can't catch. It's impossible for them to catch. The disc just goes down so fast they can't catch it. So in those cases, if I start worrying about that, I'm throwing in the headwind, and that is extremely difficult, but your dog's going to have a chance to catch it at least.
Yeah, the disc will at least be in the air.
Right.
They can get there. Yeah, my choice is dependent on the dog and how severe certain factors affect them. So Torch is my perfect example. There was one factor that was pretty much 100% of the decision-making process because it so severely affected him, and that was the sun. If I threw it into the sun, I mean, he would just straight up lose it. Couldn't see it, and if he can't see it, he can't catch it. And for me, my thought was always, well, Torch at least has a chance to catch a crappy throw in not my preferred wind if he can see it. But if he can't see it, even if the throw's perfect, what good is that going to do me? That's not going to help anything. So, I learned my lesson, unfortunately, more than once. I had a fear of headwind because oftentimes, as the world would have it, I would show up to a competition, and, when it was time to do our toss and fetch, the sun was right in our face. And of course, the beautiful wind direction was the way that we had to look into the sun. And so, there was a couple tournaments that I was like, no, the wind's just so perfect. I can throw perfect enough throw. He'll see it. No, he wouldn't see it. He was going to lose it and not see it. And we were going to be totally screwed. And then poor Torch is like, where is the Frisbee? So I learned, even if the wind's not favorable, my decision has to be made on the sun.
And with him, it was sun behind him was better. So he couldn't see the sun. Mm-hmm. And that's not the case with every dog. And believe it or not,
Muse was the opposite.
Muse was the exact opposite. And this took years for me to figure out. Anyone who was lucky enough to see her compete, amazing. Just almost automatic on every single throw, being able to catch. But she
Except
would
for one
sometimes
situation.
miss. She would sometimes miss. And the way she missed, it was very consistent. She would jump over the disc. So she would be running and she would jump and the disc would end up below her.
And she was not a pre-jumping dog. This was unusual for me.
So it was very unusual. And it just seemed so out of the blue, so random. Why did this happen? And I was at Thornton Fest in Colorado and she went 0 for 5. I threw 5 absolutely perfect throws in the middle of the 5-point zone, and she jumped over every single one of them and got a 0. And Muse doesn't get zeros.
Yeah, that's unheard of.
And I just started brainstorming, and I realized, I started thinking about the times that she had missed some. I looked back at old videos, because I had some old videos, and every single time she did it, the sun was behind her. And I started thinking,
and it was like kind of setting, like
yes, like low on the horizon,
causing a shadow
and
out
I'm
forward.
Thinking most likely what happened is she saw the shadow and then she would just react and jump. So I started throwing, if I had the option, with the sun, her facing the sun. Never did it again.
Yeah, I think most
never did it the rest of her life.
The careers of Torch and Muse, we would be throwing from opposite sides almost always.
Yes, and so that's just something to keep in mind. Don't throw into the sun. You don't know.
Yeah, it's not all the same.
One time I didn't do this. I went to the side to throw into the sun, and I looked, and the sun was so bad. I said, I'm not putting her through this. That's me just caring about my dog. You know, it was so bright. It was hurting my eyes. I couldn't even look that way. And I'm like, I'm not going to expect my dog. So if I can't look into the sun, even if it's going to be better for her for catching, it's not good for her to look in the sun like that. So it was like right on the horizon and just blinding us. It was in the middle of the summer. It was one of those competitions that went really late and the sun was right there and it was brutal. And I just decided I'm not doing it. I went to the other end. I don't remember what the results are, but I think they were good. It was at a Krusty and Muse did very good at the Krusty Classics.
Yeah. I'm lucky now with Sora that she doesn't care either way. It doesn't matter. So thank you, Sora. she, you know, I mean, a lot of it is not even something the dogs can control, like you know, seeing it. And sometimes, you know, those things could be solved by simply changing the color of the disc or changing the type of disc or changing the throw or all of those things. So, you know, you can play with those variables and they may or may not work. You know, in Torch's case, it was, let's use a black disc.
Yes, and that's
help.
Definitely try a black disc. Very few use it in toss and fetch, but I think we agree a really dark disc like that is usually the best.
Yeah, I've been using the dark blues with Sora.
And I've been doing
black.
the opaque. Opaque especially is good in any color, but the darker the better. I've been using the purple Hyperflex discs, and those are real dark.
Same color throughout the disc.
Same. Yeah, translucent, I'm generally not fond of those.
Yeah, there's a reason that, you know, so Torch's preferred disc was the superhero because the superhero falls very flat, which is ideal for Torch, of course. If you know the superhero disc, it is translucent and it does not come in black.
And I threw a superstar, especially, I don't throw much anymore, but I used to throw a lot of superstars because it did come in a black.
Right. Well, and I tried that.
And they had a nice white opaque, which is great. So if it gets really late and starts getting dark, you might want to use the white disc.
Yep. So with Torch, that didn't work because I tried the superstar. And while he could see it, he was misjudging it. He really struggled when they fall at an angle. So I was like, okay, well, I need to somehow make the superhero black. So I learned how to dye discs. And so I would dye my superheroes black. So that's how far I would take it with, you know, coming up with a strategy to help make it work. And honestly, if I wasn't able to do that, I don't know that Torch would have had as much success in toss and fetch as he did. Because, yeah, he struggled to see in the sun and he needed a special throw. And he needed the disc to fly a particular way. And, you know, once I finally figured out all the variables, we pretty much got it together. But, you know, so as far as like just another example of, you know, deciding which direction to throw based on, well, most of the time, most people will choose based on the wind. Sora's choice, I tend to throw tailwind, of course, unless it's a little too much. And I think Sora's like threshold for before I choose to throw into the wind is pretty low. So I like, even if there's just a little bit of, you know, tailwind, just enough to drop the disc too fast, I go into headwind. So even in like AWI, I started to do, or at the finals, I should say, started to go into the headwind because there's too much wind there at the
And
finals.
headwind could be good for dogs that don't catch very well, like Punky. He always does better in headwind because he has multiple chances on the disc. If you throw it good enough out there, it'll float. And he's an early jumper. He's a late jumper. He's in every kind of jumper that he should
in every direction.
Yes, to the side.
Yeah.
But if he does that, when he stops and lands and turns, the disc is still in the air, and he could turn around and get a second or even third opportunity on it. So just keep that in mind. Headwind, most people don't do it, but it could really help your dog. I used to throw it with Enzo almost exclusively because he wasn't great at catching, and it helped so much.
I've tried it with Flair, and it just makes the misses look worse. She doesn't judge it very well. She might be better now, but when she was younger, she rarely got it on the second try. She's gotten a little better at it now, but.
So do you have any last fun thoughts? I got one.
Okay, go for it.
We both started the same way in the sport, where we didn't really have a love for toss and fetch.
Yeah, that's very true.
We really only cared about freestyle. That's all we wanted to do. And after time went on, we both fell in love with toss and fetch as well. So if you aren't crazy into toss and fetch, you can definitely find that love for it like we did.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a really good point. I forgot about it. It's been so long. I actually really hated toss and fetch until I got Sora. That was the turnaround point for me, because she was so good at it and made it so easy for me that I finally felt comfortable doing it. That toss and fetch was always a source of just being nervous and,
anxiety
inducing event for me. And, I wasn't naturally good at it. And, if you're somebody that loves freestyle and not toss and fetch so much, I think you can relate to the feeling of when you nail your freestyle and you get knocked off the podium because other people had 2 or 3 times your score in toss and fetch, and you don't place because even though you were the top freestyler, your toss and fetch wasn't anywhere near good enough to hang with everybody else. So that was a big motivator for both of us to get better at toss and fetch, so that our freestyle could be showcased, so we could make the cut, so we could get the second round, so we could actually have an attempt at getting on the podium for these events that showcase freestyle.
That's right. So get out there and enjoy the toss and fetch just as much as anything else. Yeah, that's what I say.
It can become fun. I promise. Yes. It can. It may take a bit, though. Yep.
Well, thanks for watching, and let us know if you have any thoughts.
Yeah, tell us what your strategies are in toss and fetch, or anything we missed, or questions you have. We could talk about toss and fetch a lot more, so let us know what your thoughts are in the comments below. Thanks. You.